Alright friends, welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to make a fully comprehensive video going over how to properly sleep. Now, I have tons of content on sleep, and this video could go and be 10, 15, 20 hours. There is so much on sleep that you can talk about, sleep habits, sleep supplements, sleep peptides, sleep medications. There is a lot of different topics and whatnot to get into. I recommend, if you want to learn more about sleep, heading over to my members only website or booking a consult with me if you specifically are having sleep based issues. But my goal with this video is to simply give you the outline, give you some tips, give you some tricks on how to properly improve your sleep. So that being said, guys, let's dive right in. All right, so the very first thing with sleep, we'll kind of take it from the ground up here, going into some habitual things that need to be done, and then we'll take it all the way into supplements and peptides that I really like for kind of correcting one's sleep. Now, a common misconception when it comes to sleep and kind of sleeping well is that good sleep is easy to come by. Now, for some people, it is really easy to come by, just like how training well or dieting well is super easy for some people. For other people, sleep can be very difficult, okay? And if you're one of those people where sleep is difficult, I found that it's one of the most difficult kind of biological issues, whether for athletes or for kind of whoever, to solve. And there's a lot of athletes who can train well, they can diet well, but when it comes to sleep, they really struggle. So the first kind of thing I want you to, throw out of your mind is that sleep is going to be something that's easy to do, and sleep is going to be something that you can just kind of do at a whim, right? You relax yourself before bed, and you're going to get great sleep, and that's all there is to it. There's a lot that goes into sleep in this video. I don't know if it'll get too long, but I mean, there's so much to talk about because it is a difficult thing. I've worked with people before where it's taken sometimes 6 to 8 months and even longer to fix their sleep. So I say that because a lot of people, when they try to fix their sleep, they try to just do, as I said before, the basic stuff. They try to add in melatonin. They try to, do these little tweaks, and then they go, oh, my sleep still isn't great. What's going on? I'm so frustrated. But again, the reality is that sleep is a difficult, hard thing to fix. So let's talk about the very first thing, sleep schedules, okay? So when it comes to sleep, one of the most important things that you need to be doing for good sleep, and this is something that made a huge difference for me, is maintaining a proper sleep schedule, okay? So what do I mean by that? I mean that you should be going to bed and you should be waking up at the exact same time every single night. Now, you can have a little bit of variance here and there, but the goal should be every single night you go to bed at 10 p.m., you wake up at 7 a.m., whatever it is, okay? When you keep this same schedule, it makes it a lot easier for your body to kind of stick to that routine, and it makes it a lot easier for your circadian rhythm to kind of slip into sleep because it kind of knows what to expect. And I've noticed that when you stay on that schedule, it will help tremendously. And that is one of the most difficult things to do because a lot of people don't properly plan out their days. So their days are all over the place. They had this or that. They didn't get work done that they needed to. So they're up late working. They're up late talking to friends, which is fine, of course. But just know that if you're not on track with sleep, you need to make sure you maintain that consistent sleep schedule. Okay. So let's now talk about sleep environment and how to set up the optimal environment when it comes to sleep. So sleep is a very sensory type process, okay? When you go to bed, it needs to be something where you set up the proper environment. Just like how when you go train for, bodybuilding or for your sport, it's all about the environment, right? You're probably getting yourself hyped up. You're probably taking stimulants. You want to be just as stimulated and as ready to go as possible. Sleep is the opposite, but it should be the same mindset in terms of getting yourself ready to do it, right? So you need to be able to kind of, understand that your environment, you need to be very intentional in that, because for a lot of people, especially in today's world with all the stimulus, it can be very difficult to relax before bed. So what do I mean by environment? Number one, you need to have a work and an electronics cutoff time, okay? So light is very, very important, okay? And blue light is very, very important when it comes to sleep. Now, blue light plays an important role in the wakefulness process, which is why in the morning, I highly recommend people take a 10 to 15 minute walk in the sunlight to wake themselves up and to stop the melatonin secretion. But on the flip side, at night, we want to reduce that as much as possible. Now, I highly recommend two things for your kind of for your blue light intake. The first one being to wear blue light blockers with an orange tint. There's a lot of blue light blockers on the market now that are more just for style and that block blue light a little bit. The best ones are going to be the ones that have that orange tint. Those are going to be the strongest. I can try to link some below if I remember. I might not, but if you go to Amazon, they're really not that hard to find. I have a few that I really like, but I've noticed the orange tint is much better, okay? The second thing I would do in conjunction with that is I would have an electronics and a work cutoff time, okay? I say an electronics cutoff time not only for the blue light because electronics are extremely stimulatory, right? Even if you're not getting blue light, your phone still stimulates you, right? If you're scrolling through TikTok, if you're scrolling through Instagram, if your friend texts you, all of that can be potential stimulus. So what's important is that you cut off that stimulus, okay? I would say a hard cutoff time for your phone and for work of 2 hours before bed. Ideally, if you can cut off your work a little bit before then, of like 3 hours, even better. Honestly, 2 hours though is my minimum. So 2 hours before bed, you should have or your work cut off and your phone cut off and be kind of getting into that mode of like, I'm getting ready for bed, I'm getting ready to relax. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be so go, 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 go that you're so tired that when you hop into bed, you just instantly fall asleep. I used to think that this was a good thing, but I noticed that when I'm working very hard right before bed and when I'm working to a point of where I'm super stimulated, then I just drop off and I fall asleep right away and I don't kind of plan it out. I actually sleep much worse. So it's important to have that work cutoff time and that electronic cutoff time so that way you're not getting external stimulus and kind of ruining your sleep. The second thing that's going to be very important is the temperature of the room. I'm sure you've heard it by now. I've made tons of content on it. I like my room to be under 70 degrees. 65 to 68 degrees for me is a perfect temperature. Again, you want your body to be cooler while you sleep. You don't want to be excessively hot. Obviously, you don't want to be excessively cold, but being excessively hot and sweating while you sleep will ruin your sleep. So make sure your room is cooler. Third thing is going to be make sure that your room is dark, okay? You want to minimize light as much as possible. Fully dark is going to be the best, whether you achieve that with a sleep mask or with blackout curtains, whatever it may be. I think it's very important that you make sure that your room is as dark as possible. You will sleep the best. A lot of people have a bunch of kind of light coming in from the TV or from the window. Again, the best thing, even if it's a little bit of light, it can still throw off your sleep. So I would say block out all of the light. A sleep mask, a weighted sleep mask is great. Or if you hang up blackout curtains, that's also great. That will cut off all the light and you will notice that you sleep much better, okay? The other thing that I think that's very important, that is probably a no-brainer, is make sure your room's comfortable, okay? Make sure your sheets are clean, make sure your room smells good, your room is well put together, okay? If you're in a dirty, messy, gross, room that's, not well ventilated, whatever it may be. I've seen some disgusting rooms in my life, no offense. But if your room is not clean and your room is not put together, you're not going to sleep as well. And it could just be, again, it might be small, it might not even hold your sleep back, but it's just another variable that you want to eliminate. So you should keep your sleep environment very, very well locked in. The other thing that I've been liking for sleep in terms of sleep environment that you can do is I like to use the nasal strips that go over your nose and then the mouth tape. Now, I know this has become a big TikTok trend, but I do genuinely think that nasal breathing does help with deeper sleep, and you feel a lot better and more well-rested in the morning. These are dirt cheap. Go on Amazon, find a brand you like, find a brand that sticks well and that's comfortable. Some are better than others. They're really not expensive, but go get those. It'll be great. It's a great investment. Again, it's super cheap, and you will notice that, again, your sleep improves. So if you set up your schedule properly for sleep, and if you set up your sleep environment properly, then we kind of move now into some sleep supplementation, okay? Now, I always, for my clients, I have a very basic sleep stack that I tend to do, right? So the basic sleep stack is what I kind of tell people is like the sleep multivitamin, okay? So if you're trying to improve your sleep, this is kind of the very basics that I would throw in. And then, of course, as your sleep issues progress or as they get better or worse, we can make the stack more or less aggressive. But the whole point is that we're not starting with the most aggressive stack right off the bat. We're starting with something that's a little bit more mild and then kind of working up slowly. So the basic sleep supplements, which if you're someone who's watching this video that I think you would benefit from, that I think you should be adding in, is a high quality, number one, magnesium bisglycinate. Magnesium helps sleep from so many different angles. Number two is going to be a zinc-based supplement, 25 to 50 milligrams should be good. Number three is going to be 2 to 3 grams of glycine before bed. Again, glycine is a really good one that helps with sleep significantly. Number four is going to be huperzine A at a low dose, the acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. High levels of choline or higher levels of choline before bed can be very, very beneficial for things like REM sleep. Remember, when you're sleeping, especially when you're in REM, your brain is not shut off. Your brain's actually very active. So being able to kind of feed it that choline is going to be very important at helping you to improve that sleep. And it's something that a lot of people really overlook. Okay. The fifth thing that I really like, and this is going to be something that's a bit more expensive, but I think I've really never seen anyone respond bad to it, and everyone tends to like it, is going to be a CBD based product. I've always noticed that CBD has been very helpful for sleep and for relaxation, and it's something that I think you can recommend to most people really without issue. And then the final thing that I think that is good for the beginner, very basic sleep sack is going to be something like a melatonin. I personally like melatonin at only 1 milligram. You can kind of work your way up with melatonin. Now, when it comes to dosing melatonin, some people need to take a very small dosage, something like 200 to 300 micrograms is really all that you need. Some people can handle more. If you can handle more, I like to take a little bit more, not necessarily even for sleep, but for its powerful antioxidant effect. But I would say if you're kind of just starting out on your sleep stack, start it out at around 200 to 300 micrograms, okay? So those are the very basic core sleep supplements that I think would be very effective for the average person to take, okay? Two sleep supplements that kind of come, finished and ready to go that I also really like that are somewhat similar to those but a little bit different is going to be the Gorilla Dream from Gorilla Mode, and then the Chemic Sleep Aid. I think are two great sleep options on the market, where if you just want a sleep blend that's put together and finished and all in one formula, you can kind of roll with. So I really like those sleep blends. I think they work really well. Or you can go with the more basic sleep supplements that I talked about before. In the next section of this video, guys, let's talk about some sleep peptides that I really like and that I really think are beneficial for your sleep. So the very first peptide that I think is the best for sleep, and you're probably going to be able to guess it, is delta sleep inducing peptide, okay? I absolutely love this peptide. Most people respond well to it. I've never seen any major side effects to it. It really is very powerful for boosting your deep sleep. Now, you can use this as an injectable or as a nasal spray. It works very well as a nasal spray. I've noticed it also works really well as an injectable. But delta sleep inducing peptide is one of my absolute favorite things for sleep. Now, here is the kind of kick with delta sleep inducing peptide. It's not necessarily going to be the thing that's going to knock you out or make you super drowsy. But what it will do is when you are asleep, it will give you that very deep, that very quality sleep that you probably need, to have during the night. And that is also where sleep gets a little deceptive, and I'm going to talk about this later in the video. But just simply put, falling asleep and getting that 8 to 10 hours is not always an indicator that your sleep was good. Okay, you need to track the sleep, but I'm going to talk about that later in the video. But number one is going to be delta sleep inducing peptide. Again, most people respond really well to it. I've never noticed any issues with anything like addiction or kind of coming off of it like other sleep medications. And so that is going to be one of my absolute favorites when it comes to kind of helping people to fix and correct their sleep. Just don't take it thinking it's going to be the thing that makes you super drowsy or that helps you to kind of calm down before bed if you're someone that gets easily stressed out. It's going to be the thing where when you're already asleep, it helps to really deepen that sleep. The second peptide that I really like when it comes to sleep is going to be growth hormone. Now, I'm very careful in saying this because I don't think you should go take growth hormone just for your sleep. But if you're someone who's enhanced and if you're looking at kind of, cycle design, I think growth hormone is one of the best things for sleep. It helps sleep really from all different angles. It lowers cortisol. It improves deep sleep. It improves REM sleep. It does everything for sleep. So again, if you're enhanced and if you're someone who maybe has used growth hormone before and you're okay to use growth hormone, there's a lot when it comes to growth hormone. But I think that I highly recommend that you potentially use growth hormone for your sleep. I think it's very powerful. It's very important. It's one of the best peptide options you have kind of for sleep. The third peptide that I really like when it comes to sleep is going to be epitalin or epithalin, which is going to be a peptide that helps to protect the telomeres, okay, and it helps to kind of lengthen telomeres. But what it also does is it's able to restore melatonin secretion from the pineal gland in older people, okay? So It's one of my favorite peptides for kind of restoring sleep, especially if my sleep's been off. I like to run a quick course of it. It's a bioregulator based peptide, so it's going to be something that you run as a course. But I like to run a course of it, and it tends to really have long-term benefits for sleep in terms of melatonin secretion from the pineal gland, because it's working through that kind of mechanism of action, of how it's helping your body to produce or secrete more melatonin, and it's not direct melatonin. I find I have no issues with it when it comes to things like drowsiness the next day or anything like that. So epitalin or epithalin, it can be said both ways, is another one that I think is great for anti-aging and also as a sleep-based peptide. The final sleep peptide, which I very much so like, is going to be panelion. Panelion or panelion, however you say it, is going to be another bioregulator that has some impact on neurotransmitters and kind of cognitive function. It is one of the best, I think, for just relaxing, and my sleep on it is always great. So my kind of trio that I'll do is delta sleep inducing peptide, epithalin, panelion, and that, running a course of those will greatly fix my sleep. Okay, there's tons of other benefits. There is some other considerations with those, but those are kind of my main. If you're like, oh, what? Because I know peptides are so popular now. What are the main kind of sleep-based peptides that we should be looking into? Those are going to be the key ones. Finally, I will discuss some sleep medications you can potentially consider deploying. Of course, only deploy these if you've spoken with your doctor first. So probably my favorite sleep medication is not going to be any of the Z drugs. I think the Z drugs, of course, are problematic. And that needs to be a full video in itself that I probably won't even put on YouTube, because there's a lot of discussion and there's a lot of implications with taking those. With things like addiction and whatnot, of course, those can be very problematic. But what I do think is great is agomelatine. Now, agomelatine is going to do two things. It's a melatonin receptor agonist, and it also blocks certain serotonin receptors, which actually in the morning the next day is going to raise up dopamine. So agomelatine because it's a melatonin receptor agonist, I think its mechanism of action is a little bit cleaner than just pure melatonin. So instead of just taking exogenous melatonin, you're agonizing the receptors, and I find that I have way less drowsiness the next day when I use agomelatine versus when I try to push high dose melatonin. But I really enjoy agomelatine. I think it's one of my absolute favorite sleep medications that I take. I don't use it right now, but I do find it to be very effective, and I find it to be a great tool to use for sleep. That's something that people can maybe use a bit more long term. The second sleep medication that I think may be applicable for some people, and again, sleep medications are a very complicated topic, so I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, because there's a lot of different things to discuss when it comes to these, is going to be clonidine, which is an alpha adrenergic receptor 2 agonist. I think that clonidine is going to be another option that's potentially more tolerable for people and something that people can potentially deploy in more of a long-term setting. I'm not the biggest fan of it myself. It also can help to treat things like higher blood pressure. But at the same time, I do think in terms of the world of sleep drugs, where we have so many kind of toxic sleep drugs, it's one of the ones that is likely slightly better. Again, before starting any of these, please talk to your psychiatrist first. The final medication that I like is one that is called trazodone. Now, trazodone works as a SSRI. It works on the alpha adrenergic receptors, and it even works potentially on the histamine receptors at a very weak capacity. So it has a bunch of different mechanisms of action. But I think trazodone is another one that might have some applications to it, and it might be applicable for some people who are looking to fix their sleep. Again, in a more, I say safe cautiously, but in a way that's going to be more long term. So I think it has some application for people, whereas again, those Z drugs I like to stay far away from. So those are three medications that I think are decent. Again, I say that very, very cautiously and very, very carefully. So don't take this video as gospel, but those are just some things that you can potentially look into and talk with your psychiatrist about. The final part of this video that I wanted to touch on is the importance of sleep tracking. I tell this to all of my clients, but if you're guessing in the dark about your sleep, you are going to be, severely hindering your sleep. I think the Oura Ring is a good option for sleep tracking. I think the Whoop is a good option for sleep tracking. Again, some of these are super expensive. This isn't a fitness wearable channel. But again, usually I just rely on my Oura Ring for my sleep data, and I found that it's pretty good for sleep data. Is it good for other things? Not really. It's kind of, just for sleep. but I do like it for sleep. The reason why this is important is because you can actually kind of see in real time how your sleep was. Okay, simply put, being in bed and sleeping or going off how you feel, they are important variables and factors, but things like the Oura Ring can provide you with insightful details on how to kind of fix and correct certain sleep based issues. So that's why I like to always make sure that I'm tracking my sleep and that my sleep is being properly, tracked, so that way I can have a plan of action, and that way I can know, hey, I did sleep for 9 hours yesterday, but I got really bad deep sleep and really bad REM sleep. I need to focus on that in my sleep stack. Or my latency period was really long. I need to focus on that in my sleep stack. Or maybe I realize, oh, I felt really good. I felt really rested. My deep sleep was great. My REM sleep was great. I went to sleep really quickly. Hey, my sleep was great last night. But it's very important that you track those and that you have those metrics and those data, just the data points that you can use, just like with blood pressure or blood glucose, because those can be so, so important. With that being said, guys, this is my basic video on sleep. Again, I say basic because there is so many things to talk about when it comes to sleep and properly optimizing your sleep. Again, I could talk for hours and hours and hours. What is important is that you watch this video thoroughly through. Potentially, I'll include an article with it. But make sure, guys, head over to biohackingu.com for more information on sleep, biohacking, nootropics, really everything that you will need. Everything that you might need is going to be over on that website. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And until next time, guys, have a good one.